several of you may have seen Ingo speak earlier today so eloquently about all things AI. So he will be chairing this panel, and Nick Dehadray and Veronica Chang are his panelists. I will let you guys all kind of do a bit of an introduction to yourself, but I will say that I have worked with both Nick and Veronica, so this particular panel is close to my heart. Thank you. Pass it on to you. Thanks, Ingo.
Thank you very much, Stacia. So probably a hand for Stacia. So I have the privilege to sit on this panel and also to get to know Veronica and Nick already in a short discussion. And I have to say that we have already had a very engaging discussion about today's topic. So actually we have been hearing a lot about AI, about our colleagues from IBM and how it could actually also usher in a new era. So we have been quite critical also around the table because is it really ushering a new era? And probably, is it really ushering a new era, which we haven't been talking so much about today? And this is the new era of the new local. Because we have been talking also just a few minutes ago a lot about e-mass customization, a little bit about, well, how to integrate the individual. But what about places? What about the people living in their spaces, also going for that? So actually, AI is probably not only changing the episteme of the time, but it's also changing space, realms, opening up new realms. So our session will be also about opening up new realms, and I will start with probably Veronica, that you introduce yourself, and then with the question, so are we really onto the first stage of ushering in the age of the new local enabled by AI? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for Ingo and Stacya's introductions. And so I think I would like to introduce myself a bit, right? So just let you know, so in 10 years ago, I studied in UAL, LCF. I went to the graduate diploma in fashion management for 1 year, and after that my business partner Andre, just behind all of you, yes, and then so we are co-founder, and it for our first startup Favor Up. So at the time we were studied in University of Warwick, and we start our entrepreneurship journey, and because of the background we're in fashion industry here in UAL, so we just get some inspiration and start from collaborations with fashion brands, including independent designers, high street fashion, and luxury retailers like Farfetch. So how we do is that we help these companies to identify their loyal customers and to help their find out where is their content creator in different markets, so to help them turn it into a brand advocate. So with that, how we do that is like the technique behind it. So it's like we're using a Facebook, Instagram API to filter out all the content, and with the AI algorithm behind it, we analyze which content is on brand and non-toxic for those business, and help them to turn those those user customers into their loyal customers and their brand advocate to create content for them. And after that, in 2024, this year, Andre and I, we start our second business in Mobility. Mobility is AI-driven platform to help transportation industry, supply chain industry to analyze the data. It's more like we kind of like amplify our expertise in geo-targeting and analysis. So transportation is all about location. So we help them to do like railway maintenance operation in warehouse to help them have a better idea in the optimization of the depot. Yes, and it's all about how we help them gain better experience in like for railway industry is for passenger experience. And so how we've done is like the cross industry experience really help us to get a better insight to amplify the engagement in customers and the passengers. And regarding the new logo we are doing, I think I can more focus on how those international brands really create their marketing strategies. I think it's really different from independent brands to gain awareness globally. So from the perspective, it's like you may already know, like ASOS, the high street fashion brand, they do have new items every week. It's around 80,000 pieces of garment, and their clients is worldwide. But how to use the local insight, the geo-targeting insight to help them gain the market, it's really important. And one of our clients, Farfetch is the biggest luxury retailers in traffic. So in 2020, we come to their team and they kind of like, we help them to identify who is their loyal customer in multiple markets and to turn them into brand influencers, brand advocates. At that time, we help them to use AI algorithm to find out which content is more useful for them, especially for this kind of like this size of company. Their customer not only worldwide, but also their supplier. Their supplier including their physical store, including their brand partners, boutiques, or warehouse all around the world. Really, because of the luxury goods has its specialty in, because it's limited, it's really expensive, so only a couple items, like for example, 2 items, one in Moscow, one in Taipei, Taiwan, and how to calculate the most the best route delivered to customers is really important. So they do have like a dynamic pricing system. So behind the shipping process, it's really complexity. So it's behind the system, you need to calculate the products, the price, but you also need to plus shipping fee, the import duty, VAT, handling fee, etc. So with that, they really need the AI algorithm to help them identify, to get a better idea on market segment. Yeah. So with this, you can see many numbers behind, and they need lots of data. But in terms of the so you say how to do it or not to do. From this perspective, I would say for the small company or SMEs, small companies, sometimes we don't really have big data behind. Right. Yeah, and you can see it really needs techniques, and it really needs to put capital on it. So does it really work? We do have a kind of an approach behind our company. It's called Innovation Story Canvas. Mm-hmm. It's help brands and managers to understand what is their high-level strategies, rather than just put the data and try to solve the current problem. It's really important. Yeah.
I mean, Veronica, thank you very much, because that fits perfectly well to the discussions we have been having, because it's about data. And I like the innovation story canvas of asking the right question first, and then to actually see which kind of data we need to collect or which kind of data we can really use. And then probably also filling the gap for some of you probably about geo-targeting, because geo-targeting is normally something that people do not normally have in mind, but thank you very much also for pointing to the fact that sometimes, especially for high-end products like for Farfetch and those products, the taxes and also the kind of levies and the tariffs on those products can be quite high. So in India it can be 300% of the market value, and if you import it into the country and then you don't sell it, well, it's directly oriented on your profit and losses. So it's really directly profit and loss relevant. And this is these kind of data sets which are normally largely overlooked. So also with your kind of orientation of really doing some kind of inherent consulting with a company, so as far as I understood you, of really coming up with a kind of data collection strategy, and then also saying, well, we could make use of this geo-targeting data much more, because also, and this is just like, Nick, bear with me, just for the clarification with Veronica. So I understood you rightly that sometimes you also had to build from scratch probably the geo-targeting data, because in most supply chains we don't find them even today.
Yes. So regarding how we collect those data, is like as I mentioned, we use API to get more content from Facebook and Instagram. But to be honest, in the beginning, we don't really use AI to do that. We use human intelligence because it's much, it's way more affordable in the beginning. For example, like Farfetch, the market in the United States is more about 3 million profits per month. But the numbers of their top customers may only be the thousands. And if you want to find out the brand advocates, the content creator may be only 50 content creators out there. And could we really do that with by analyzing those content? I think yes, it's kind of like in the beginning, it would be super expensive, and we're still in the exploring stage to identify Farfetch's brand identity, and to identify is the content really on brand. So that's really interesting in the beginning. But later on, the business get clearer idea, then the expense will be lower in terms of times invested. Yes.
Thank you very much. So now we could move on to Nick. So we have been also discussing a little bit about what you do. So also thank you very much for your short introduction of what you do and where you come from. And then also to you, the kind of question of how can we get into this kind of new notion of the local, and also probably the changing of the realms and the new kind of technical possibilities that we have with the different forms of AI that we're now seeing. Thank you.
So I'm Nick. I've got a huge title, which is Global Director of Creative Strategy and Innovation, which is very big. And I work at a company called Hogarth, which is part of WPP, which, if you don't know, it is one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world. And Hogarth within that is the biggest production agency in the world. So we work with every major brand in the world. It's like the Unilevers, the Nestle's, Rolex, L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble, everyone, basically. And what we do there in Hogarth is we make everything. So anything that needs to be done, if it's like translation, content production, video, VFX, absolutely everything, we'll do it. And within that, I run a very small unit, actually, for somebody with such a big title, which is just called Applied Innovation. And what we do is we look at all the technology that's out there at the moment, and we see how we can apply it to brands practically to make content. And we work in a very quick, agile way, and a lot of that is building tools and products that we can use for brands, or brands can use themselves. So it's either managed services or self-service. So tools that we make, I mean, it's interesting talking about localization now, because obviously one of the things we do is transcreation, which is where you translate, but you don't just translate, you have to get the tone of voice correct, so it's about getting all those subtle nuances. So we work on building a lot of our own AI models, where we take in localized data for brands, specifically around their goods, and then we build a model that will only use that tone of voice. So one example really is something that we did an experiment for Heinz, and it's quite interesting because people don't use Heinz products the same way they do in every country, we found out. So the way you use ketchup in England, apparently, is different in Scandinavia. I don't know how, no one ever actually explained why it was different. But we had to sort of collect this data around it, and then you build a model so that if you build a chatbot or you build something that creates email campaigns, it gets that information right. It's not just saying one message, like each country has a different message, so it all has to be localized in that way. It's not just changing the language, it's changing the voice and the tone of voice and how you talk about these things. So that's one of the areas that we look at. And the other is obviously image generation. And we've got a huge project at the moment, which is with Coca-Cola and NVIDIA. We've got quite high-level partnerships with tech companies, but NVIDIA is probably the biggest one at the moment, and we've got Microsoft as well. But what we're doing with Coca-Cola is they've got something called Coca-Cola Meals. So Coca-Cola basically sponsor like 3,000 restaurants around the world or something like that. So they need tons of content around meals from around the world. So it's all localized images. And they need to have like a Coke product in there as well. So we had to develop this entire system whereby you can put any Coke product in an image with any meal. So the meal is AI, and then the product is 3D, and it's comped into the image. And so it's all in a little interface, and you can just select whichever one you want, and then just produce any image. And obviously the advantages are you don't have to photograph all of that.
So that's fascinating, and also picking your brains on your experiences with, because you said you are working with NVIDIA, I mean, gold standard or even diamond standard, and Microsoft. But what about the other tools that are really normally available, like Stable Diffusion, Stability Engine, but also Midjourney, OpenAI? So how have they been faring in really coming up with a meal and really integrating local information on that?
Yeah, it's quite tricky because we will try absolutely every bit of software that comes out just to see how it does and which is best, and each has their advantages and disadvantages, but then there's also the ethical and legal position around all of these products as well, and that's where it gets really tricky. In terms of meals, in terms of most image content, like Midjourney is the best, but no one knows where their data comes from or how they got it, so you can't use it. Unless the brand agrees to it, and then you can use it. But we say you can't use it. Unless you really want to. But then you have like other platforms which have like copyright-free data, and you can use them for anything, but the images aren't so good. So you can't really use them. So then you're sort of trapped in this middle area where you can't use things because legally it's tricky, or you can't use things because the quality is not so good. But a lot of what we do is we find ways around it. We've got because we're building our own tools, it's not just about churning out an image using a platform. We build on top of it, and we have other tools that is creating a pipeline, so it creates realistic looking foods or realistic looking images, whatever it might be that we need to do. We build our own models as well, so we get our own data, because we've got lots of data that we can use. So we'll build all of that on top of it. So we'll have like extra models. Some of it's built with stability, which is great because you can customize really so many things with stability. And I've just seen, I think Stability 3 just came out about an hour ago.
An hour ago. Yeah. Talking about that and picking your brains on also, because a colleague of IBM has been talking about Adobe Firefly quite a lot. So in the morning he said that Adobe Firefly for him is a kind of nice program. So just wanted to pick your brains if you also have been working with Adobe Firefly, because one of the most important aspects, in my point of view, you said it, like it's the IPR question and the copyright question. I mean, it's sorted because the Adobe Firefly normally runs on this iStock kind of licensing model where they have been licensing all of their content, presumably. What are your kind of experiences with Adobe Firefly?
I mean, I really love it. Like Adobe's another partner. We really love working with them. We love what they do. It's good for certain images, like it depends what you need. Like the in-painting generative fill is amazing. Like that's obviously sped up retouching like by a million times. Like it's so incredible. Actual generating images, I think they can still be better quality. I think they've still got a way to go. I think with some of these products, like with Adobe, like they're saying like the data is coming from Adobe stock or it's images they have, or like they know the provenance of the images. And I think that's true, but the number of creatives I've spoken to, because we come across a lot in the industry, that say they're generating images on Midjourney and then putting them in Adobe stock. Okay, so I guess that's fine.
I guess that's fine. That's good. I mean, because talking about that, and this is also, and probably also for the two of you now, coming back to the next question before we open up to the audience, because we also wanted to have it a little bit more interactive. So the second question, I mean, we have been also touching base on that. How about really the locality of the strategy of the companies before you started working with them? I mean, Coca-Cola, I mean, I also, back in the days, it has been ages, I've been working with them, so they have already some kind of very good insight when it comes to localities. But having said this, and as a caveat, sometimes their localities are different than normally we would think. So they're normally thinking along these lines of mass markets, like regions, like they're talking about India. They're not even talking about states, but they're really talking about India, which is, well, pretty different in Kerala, I've been told, to some kind of other places in other states in India. So I just wanted to pick your brains very shortly. So probably, Nick, what are your kind of, learnings? Because AI can help us also identify these kind of more micro realms and even these kind of regions where certain loyalties are there.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly one of the things that the ideas behind Coca-Cola meals is that one of the big regions is Inswa, which is India, essentially. And I think it's India and Southwest Asia.
Yeah, something like that.
9 regions. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why you're doing it, because you will get certain foods in India, like a biryani, but in different areas of India it's different, so it's not always the same. So that all has to be localised. And depending on the region you're in, like, we have to change that meal. So we have to get that specific about it and that granular about all of these meals, that it all looks correct in the right region. I think in the past, the problem was there was just no quality control. Because if you just leave it up to the other regions to create these things, then it's not the same as the global chief creative director's vision of what a Coca-Cola meal should look like. And there are really specific brand lines of what a Coca-Cola meal should look like, because we've had to sort of embed it into the software that we built.
You're really not kidding. You had to embed it in the software, like really kind of lines. So this has how a meal has to look like.
Yeah, there's like the angle of the camera, like there's a color tone, there's the focus, there's like the perspective. Absolutely everything.
I mean, especially about the color. I mean, this is really very interesting because it's so different. I mean, in different regions, colors have really different meaning. So
not anymore. It's got to be a Coca-Cola.
It's going to be. But Veronica, how about you? How have been your experiences before working with brands like Farfetch? I mean, have they been even kind of sensitized for this kind of local orientation before you came in and also introduced them a little bit more to geo-targeting?
Yes, I think I could share, aside from Farfetch, I can share more about how we do in mobility, because I think there are many legal things behind, and really need to really need to avoid some data protections. So everybody already heard of like a GDPR. It's in Europe, and other regions also had other data protections like CCPA in California and PEPDA in Canada. And for example, GDPR is emphasized on minimize the data exposure. If you are not really sure, it's not necessary to deal with the kind of if the data not necessary for you to do some
to store.
Yes. Yeah. So you can't really use the data if you didn't get permission. And we because our core technique in mobility is object tracking
Oh.
on CCTV system. So you can see everywhere the CCTV can film everybody's face. But regarding the data protection issue, we really need how we do that is we use the filter to blurring the faces.
Oh, so you put a filter, you have facial recognition CCTV raw data, and then you have a filter which
Yes.
you take over the okay.
Yeah, but you can imagine that honestly, the accuracy will be much lower after faces being blurred. So we do have other sensors to support to make the accuracy higher. So you can make heard of like a carbon dioxide creation in the room. You can measure how many people are in the room, or in the train you can use the weight sensor to see how much weight, then make a rough calculation on how many people are on the vehicle. Yeah, those sensors helps. However, the truth is every sensor has its own limitations. Yeah, and to higher the accuracy, it would be much expensive. It's maybe 10 times higher than the original expense. So implementing AI is important. However, make sure it's under the legal protection is so much important, because if you didn't think about this scale, you may lose lots of capital. So that's some of the real case we are facing, and we can tell our clients we do have it's what we see, and we can suggest on that.
Thank you very much for sharing. So now I wanted to open up, and if you have any questions, please shoot.
Thank you so much for this segment. I have a question for Nick, and it's always very interesting to see when there's use of the words creative strategy, innovation, in a creative context in your world, which is the ad world. In terms of, I have two sort of sub-questions. Basically, the question is about what does creative strategy look like at Hogarth, what you do. But in terms of like actions, what is some of the tangible, it may lead to tangible or intangible outcomes, because a lot of it could be conversations, etc. What do those activities look like from your perspective for building creative strategy and innovation works, which is like asking a very broad question, but and the other question is like the timeline range of, let's say a client comes to Hogarth to build a creative strategy or build some more explore work or innovation work. What does the timeline range look like? And I say range because it depends on every client's different.
Yeah, so basically with creative strategy, the work we do is all about the practical application. So we don't give any presentations where it's like charts and figures and diagrams and pyramids, circles, all those kind of exciting bits. But it's all the work that we actually do and all the stuff that we make, which is a huge amount. So it's all stuff we make ourselves. And so initially that's the conversation with the brand. It's like, this is what we do it here, this is how we can do it, this is what we can do for you. And then we have a consultation period after that, or a sprint. And what we do there is we say, look, for 3 months we'll work with you, we'll take a look at everything you make, how you make it. You know, it might be copywriting, might be video, might be images, could be 3D models, absolutely anything, whatever they want to approach us with. And then we'll see how we can augment that with technology, which might not be just AI, because we do like a lot of other areas, but mostly at the moment everyone just comes to saying, can you do this with AI? It's like, yeah, maybe. And so then we'll take a look at all of those, and we'll run a number of POCs, because we've got a very agile, quick unit. We've got a huge amount of resources that we can use. So we've got about 20 creative techs, And then we've got an entire team down in Chennai, in India, that do 3D modelling, video work, absolutely anything that we need. So we can build anything they want, do it really quick, really cheaply, see if they like it, see if it works. Some of those things work, some of those things fail, but out of it, generally, we get some like amazing ideas. And it's really good for us because we get bigger ideas for tools moving forward that we can use ourselves. So that's generally the idea, so we'll present, we'll say it's like a 3-month consultation. After that, it will then have to go into a bigger production, and that can take a long time, depending on what I want.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen from Nottingham Trent. I have a question about decentralised AI. So you've sort of talked about some of the big players, and then you've talked about your own LLMs that you're making, but sort of looking to the future, what do you think the promise is and the kind of opportunities for AI to become less centralised and more decentralised? To anyone.
You can jump in first. Yeah.
For brands want to own their own data and they want it ring-fenced. So whatever they have, they don't want to provide into bigger models. They want to keep it separate, and it's about security. So with brands, it's about building a lot of models for them, and it's all got to be in their tone of voice or their own visual style. So if it's imagery, they already have dams of images, which is like a huge bank of images. So it's like, okay, well, if we can get access to that and get the rights to those images, then we can build models using those images that you've got already, and then that becomes your own personal model, and you can create any images you want from it, and it'll all be in the tone of voice and the right style. And similarly, with anything written, we can do the same thing with copywritten material. So I think that's really like how the future looks. I think that's what brands want that we're hearing at the moment. Not all brands. Some brands will just use anything. Klarna, apparently. I read an article.
Yeah, it's astonishing. Klarna and Visa are now going into it. It's really, oh my god.
Klarna said they're saving 10 million a year by just generating imagery rather than using photographers. So. I think they just use it mid-journey.
I think that's good. Nick's answer is really comprehensive. Yeah, and for us, because our expertise is to analyze those content. So because in 2020, at the time, it's the time I think AI start booming. I think it's already been there many years. But I think last year, Gen AI, because it came out, it's changed all the industry. So I think Nick already said it really clear about how the industry will look like.
I mean, just like jumping on that, and just like as a kind of small, also probably a little bit more going into that direction of how about the data and the ramps and the dams that you have been talking about, and these kind of treasures that they which are really, but sometimes a treasure hoard. And these treasure hoards, I suppose, will get also valued at a certain point of time in the future. So actually, these kind of localized, and this is also about the new local, data will be much more worth if they're really localized, if they're kind of contextualized with geo-targeting, with former sales, with former orientations. And if you then come up with a tokenization, and really with a data custodianship, so we're really talking about it. This is probably something that I just wanted to pick your minds on. How about DeFi? How about decentralized finance in this kind of, because we're really talking about an emerging asset class there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really talking about emerging assets which are built on a local quality.
Yeah.
And this might be a sustainable materiality that they have, but it's really actually a financial materiality based on the local. So I just wanted to pick your brains in a kind of, I just like piggybacked on your question because it's so good, because I think the tokenization is something to really take into account.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So the quality of data and also the value, the economic value of localized data.
Yes. So it really depends on kind of like we will start with like the brand strategies. And which is your priorities in your the business value you want to achieve first. So I think there are many things people are really want to dive into, like the emotions or the shopping process. But in our approach, like a innovation story canvas approach, we will have a higher level on strategies and to clearize about it's about what kind of strategy you want to emphasize first. It's like your customer satisfactions, or you want to speed up the checkout process as for many disappears shopping carts. So we will start from that.
What about your thoughts about tokenization and future assets?
I mean, I think that'd be amazing, like, if you could tokenize it, and like people do get paid fairly for like localized like imagery or whatever it is they own. I know with image libraries at the moment, and I've heard this from the CEO of a big image library, where I said, how do you pay people if it's AI?
We don't.
It's basically, they said, money is sort of split between the number of people they have that provide content, but what he was really saying is, if you've got 5,000 images on there, then you would get a big chunk of money, and I would get a small chunk of money if I've only got like 10 images on there. Like, well, that's not really right.
Fair.
Yeah, so it's like, but how do you really know like what images have been taken into consideration in making an AI image? I think that's the really difficult part, you know, because all we see is one big data set. We don't know which ones are being considered when it's building these patterns and making the actual image. So, I mean, I agree. I think anyone whose images and data has been used should get paid somehow, if it can be tokenized, and that would be absolutely incredible. When we were doing the Coca-Cola meals thing, we obviously needed lots of data for food, and I said, this didn't happen, but I said, look, our company's got 120,000 people in it around the world, just get them to take pictures of their dinner, send it in, and then, you know, if we use it, give them a day off. Didn't happen.
Didn't happen. Thank you.
Or at least a free Coke.
Yeah.
I prefer it.
We had one other question, and then I think we also have to wrap up. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your sharing. It's very valuable. I'm Suyuan, and I'm studying women's wear right now. I'd like to ask, when Veronica said about the small company wants to buy data, but actually it's difficult for them because data is quite expensive. I'd like to know, the first question is, where does people usually buy data from? Is there especially a kind of company to sell? They're gathering mining data and they sell it? And the second question is, you said about for improving the accuracy, a company might to cost 10 times money. I'd like to know, where does this money go? Is it from the algorithm developing or tuning the model or anything? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So that's really interesting questions. And thank you, Sue. Yeah. So where's the money spent? Is like because you need to install sensors in every environment. So as I said, if you want to film the footpaths in the retail store, you might install many cameras. It costs money, and also the sensor, because every sensor, if you want, it's different functions. Like you want to measure the shoe size in gender-wise, you want the sensor to detect what's the size of the person, and it helps you to have a better understanding on clothing size. If it's a matter, I think the different sensor costs different, but also has their limitations. Yeah, and when you get some data and through the process, how to implement those data into your AI system. As the tech team, you are invested is also is where money go to, because a team, you may hiring them for half a year, maybe not enough, will be like 1 year or 2 years. Then you can get the killer results on how the answer, the question you want to answer. So So before that, we usually just like we will tell small company like AI is interesting. AI is great. It's really helpful, but it's costs lots. And so before you really, if you do have a clearer business opportunity, want to achieve that really needed the data, I think you can start to calculate those data first. Later on, if it's the time and your capital is ready, I think that's the time to invest in. Yeah. And can I get back to the first question you asking? And can you remind me a bit?
Yeah, I want to ask about company. Where do they usually buy data?
Oh, by data. For what?
For example,
Yes.
Farfetch, they need
Yes.
some data to improving their model
Yes.
performance. Where does they buy those data?
Actually, we didn't really ask their tech team where they buy the data. But there are many open sources the engineers can get those open data from. So it's from different organizations. So it really depends on what kind of data you want to withdraw. Then start. The engineer will have an internal discussion on what's the best way and the most cost efficiency to help you train the AI machine. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we've reached the end of our session, I suppose.
Thank you again to all three of you. Let's have a lovely, warm thank you for our